think it's always helpful to remember that we as adults do not excel in every category of life. And so rather than looking at, oh, my baby needs support, let's just say with motor milestones, as there's something wrong with them, it's more like, this is part of who they are as a little person. And wow, do they excel in this other area? Because most often we will see that.
Welcome to Raising Healthy Families with Moms Meet and Kiwi. We're giving you the tools to enjoy the beauty and chaos of life with little ones in the healthiest way possible.
The 10th annual Moms Meet WOW Summit is heading to sunny SoCal November 10th through the 11th, 2023. Get your tickets now for 2 days of inspiration, education, and product sampling from your favorite Better For You brands. Visit momsmeet.link/summit23 to register now.
I'm your host, Becca Slocum, and today I'm really excited to be joined by the movement mama, Kailee Noland. She is a pediatric physical therapist, and we're going to talk about childhood development and meeting milestones when it comes to movement. You can find Kailee on Instagram at The Movement Mama and themovementmamablog.com. Welcome, Kailee. We are so excited to have you.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
Yes, of course. So let's just jump right into it. Can you share a little bit with us about the role of being a pediatric physical therapist?
I would love to. I think this is a confusing topic for many. A lot of people get confused between OTs and PTs. And the good thing is we really, and especially in the first year, so talking about babies, we overlap a lot with what we do. But physical therapists are supposed to be movement experts and empowering their patients to be able to move in a way that they want to, and in the way that they, like for babies, that we know that they should be moving along that developmental trajectory. So a lot of my work is focused for myself primarily on birth to 3. So what we call early intervention, that's just my expertise, but pediatric PTs can work, all the way up until really we go up to 21, is kind of where we then kind of pass the baton. And even that is a little bit fuzzy depending on our patient and their needs, but we help babies move, we help kids move. So whether that be tummy time, rolling, sitting, crawling, walking, running, jumping, climbing, and then even up into higher level sports type activities, it is really a wide gamut, but we just want to help kids move in a way that they want to be moving.
I just want to highlight that I'm so surprised to hear you say 21. I feel like most of the time when we think of pediatrics, it's 18, but 21 is I'm just surprised to hear you say that.
Yeah, and everyone may say it a little bit different, but in particular, there are 2 kind of areas of pediatric PT. And so the ones that, and we work with all patients, but kind of where you specialize. And right now, a lot of my specialty is on developmental delay and just in general wellness with development. But a lot of what I did whenever I was working more full-time in the clinic was with kiddos who had maybe a really rare genetic diagnosis, or things like cerebral palsy or Down syndrome. And so those are the children that we really feel like we can best serve as long as possible. And then if they do feel ready to go to more of a traditional orthopedic PT, then that's great. But that's why I said it's kind of fuzzy, because there are people that may have CP or Down syndrome or any other diagnosis that they just feel really comfortable and confident playing with and having fun with a pediatric PT. And if that's the best fit, then that is where they stay.
Sure, absolutely. And that makes perfect sense. So you touched on your age, like the ages that you're working with. Can you dive a little bit deeper into some of the issues that you treat?
Absolutely. So a lot of really, when you look like at my account, like the Movement Mama and the Movement Mama blog, a lot of what I talk about there is what we call developmental delay, or just general developmental wellness, meaning as a society, we are trying to really move in the clinical world from a reactive posture towards things to more of a proactive posture. And so that means that I really work to educate families on things that they can be doing just as part of their everyday routines to help support and nurture their baby and toddler's development. But a lot of what I was doing in the clinic was similar. It was just very focused on, okay, we know that this baby has maybe this diagnosis. They have these musculoskeletal asymmetries. They have this tightness here, this weakness there, and we're really targeting what this child specifically needs. So I kind of sort of two realms that I do there.
Mhm.
Did that answer your question?
It did. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I have a follow-up where I am going to ask you about maybe some tips that you would have for parents to avoid maybe some common things that you see. I know that some of your work is focused on very specific diagnoses, but maybe a more like general overview type of like a common issue that you might see pop up and how parents could address that.
Yeah, that's how my account kind of started. Was I was working in early intervention in the home, which, quick disclaimer, if you live in the United States, early intervention, state-based early intervention is free or very low cost in every state. It's something that not a lot of people know about. Your child does have to qualify with a certain percentage delay, and that's different for each state. But if you are curious and just want to know more, just go. This is the one time I will tell people to Google. Go to Google and type in your state and then type in early intervention. And usually you can find something where you can call and get a referral, and they'll come out to your house most of the time and evaluate your baby or your toddler. And even if it's determined that your child doesn't qualify, if they're doing their job right, which I assume many of them are, they're going to still leave you with practical tips as they're exiting, like, hey, we know you're worried about this, like, try this and this, so that you feel a little bit better before your next well visit.
Well, I'm going to pause you for 2 seconds there because I'm really glad that you kind of put that plug in there. My twins are now 2.5. And when they were first born, our hospital initially introduced us to early intervention and then our pediatrician. And it was something that I sort of like wrote off at first. And I was like, no, we'll be fine. And we're going to talk about milestones. And I know that's sometimes a trigger word for a lot of parents. But we ended up using early intervention for speech, and it was such a wonderful tool. So I'm just going to piggyback off of you and just say, if there's, anything that you're curious about, if you're interested in any different types of resources, we received so much information through early intervention, and it was phenomenal. Anyways, back to the point that we were talking about. This is like we're chatting about how to avoid some of those common issues that you might see pop up.
Right. I just got all excited on my soapbox about early intervention. And so really, this is how my account came to be. I just thought, I'm going into these homes, and so many amazing moms and dads and other caregivers were saying, gosh, if I just would have known this, if I would have been told this, or if someone would have told me to avoid this thing, I just really feel like maybe we wouldn't be in this position. And that's kind of two-sided. As a parent, you are not called to be a therapist. And so it can be hard because I'm a mom and I'm a therapist.
Sure.
So when you look at my account, don't think, oh, I should know all these things. Like, she's a mom and she knows all of this. Well, that's my job to know those things. And that's really where a therapist could come in should you need support. But I wanted to create a resource for families to get that information. And it's amazing, that's one of the silver linings of COVID, is that a lot of these accounts have come to be now, that we really can educate ourselves. And so, one of the biggest things that I see is we are fighting, I say we, therapists are fighting this baby industry that's telling us we need all of these things for our baby to be happy, to sleep, to play, to just function. And I think there's such a huge push too for working motherhood, and also that dynamic of now, like, there's all these moms who are working from home and trying to juggle, well, there's no room at the daycare, so I'm going to keep my baby home and I'm going to work and I'm going to do all of these things, and just so much pressure. So, ultimately, one of the biggest things I can recommend is simplifying what you have in your life for your baby and thinking, does my baby really need this piece of equipment? For example, like, do they need to be moving constantly between a bouncer, a swing, an exerciser, a jumper? Or could I try to start prioritizing floor time or just freedom of movement time? That doesn't have to be on the floor. It can be in their crib. It can be in a pack and play, whatever, to build their interest and tolerance to just moving on their own. And that's different for every family. I mean, I can't imagine having to be, like, for example, on this podcast right now and having my baby home and worrying that they were going to fuss. So those are times where I would say, like, girl, you need to use that swing, like, whatever you need to do to keep that baby quiet, because that is a very unique circumstance. But I think kind of challenging ourselves of, am I being sold this item because I truly need it? And that spans all of motherhood and all of child development and anything that our children may need. Like, do they really need this? Or is there an ulterior motive? Like, is there an industry that's trying to tell me that I need these really big ticket items? So just freedom of movement is so huge for babies. The more we can let them move, the more that they learn on their own. And that really is play for them. They are fascinated, especially in that first year, with movement and exploring their new ways of using their body. So that is a huge thing for sure, to try to avoid what we call baby containers in the therapy industry. And, again, like, you have to decide what's right for your family.
Right.
But a lot of us just have a fear of putting baby on the floor when really that's where they want to be.
Sure.
But of course, if we put them in something that they're really cozy into, they're going to be happy and content there as well. But we do see sometimes with overuse of that kind of equipment that it can lead to delays. And so just as a general rule, like if we had a gold standard day, I try to tell people to get twice as much free movement time as time spent in a device or piece of equipment. And that includes car seat. So that's tough sometimes to think about, but maybe you've got older kids and you've got lots of drop-offs and pickups and all of that, and they're in the car quite a bit. Really prioritize when you get home, letting them lay in their crib or lay in a pack and play or on the floor in a safe space.
That's a really great rule of thumb. I have never thought of it like that, but I really like the idea of, hey, they've spent X amount of time contained, so let's give them double the amount of time to move freely on their own. And I also appreciate you bringing up, sometimes if we use these items too much, that could lead to a delay, because I don't know if we all know that. I think that was something, especially for me as a first-time mom, I didn't realize that. It was just one of those like, well, baby's fussing, so let's, put them in a swing, or let's use the exerciser at some point. And it's hard to know what's good and what's not. So with that all being said, I want to jump into milestones, which to me is still one of those words that, like, I cringe every time I hear it, just because it's a daunting word. And it can cause a bit of panic in some parents, especially if you feel like maybe your child is not hitting them when they're supposed to be. So how should we be viewing meeting milestones, such as sitting up, crawling, walking, in the big picture of development?
Great question. I want to circle back because I forgot to say something earlier.
Sure.
The other thing that I recommend families look into, and I have a lot of resources on this on my website that hopefully you guys can link, is sometimes babies are going to be fussy and they just need us. The middle ground for me, what I would like for parents to choose if they're able, is baby wearing. So baby wearing has a lot of benefits, and I don't want to go, on another tangent there, but for sure, there are times where they really, really just need to be held, or they need to be in something. And that's a great way to feel like you're comforting them and soothing them, but they're also not just in this passive baby container. So that's another thing just wanted to say. But yes, milestones are so hard, and it's so intense, especially in that first year, because there's so many different things. It's really exciting, actually, because there's so many things that we have to look forward to that our babies are going to be doing.
Right.
But they're also their own unique little people. And we have to remember that. I'll never forget the day that my first daughter was born. She was just like perked up and eyes wide and looking around the room and like looking at people. And my grandma, who has been a child care provider for many, many years, said, you just wait. The little person she is today is going to be, you're going to see that through time. And it really held to be true, because she's very socially driven. She loves people. She loves observing things. But she really did struggle with her motor milestones. And so I think it's always helpful to remember that we as adults do not excel in every category of life. And so rather than looking at, oh, my baby needs support, let's just say with motor milestones, as there's something wrong with them, it's more like, this is part of who they are as a little person. And wow, do they excel in this other area? Because most often we will see that, right? Like you mentioned, you guys did speech and language. Like maybe your babies had another area that they really were excelling in, and then speech and language fell behind a little bit. And so, trying to get out of this mentality of it has to be something wrong and more of they just need a little bit of extra support. And I'm not called to be their therapist. I'm their mom who can help play with them at home in a way that this therapist is telling me to do. But it can be really, really hard. And I think the other hard thing for families is that we're being told like they need to hit all these check marks. Well, then we go to the pediatrician, and not all pediatricians are this way, but I think in their wisdom and trying to not worry parents will say, oh, I saw that they're supposed to be doing this by this point and they're not doing that. Do you think that I should get a therapy referral? And then we're met with, well, let's just wait and see. Let's wait till the next visit. Well, then we're stuck in this limbo of, okay, I'm feeling anxious because my baby's behind. And now I'm suddenly feeling the pressure that I need to go Google or get on Instagram and suddenly put together some sort of therapy plan. And I already have a million things that I'm worrying about as a mom. And so I just think it's really a tough time. There's so much information that we're getting to. We're also seeing our friends' babies on social media. And that's always the highlight reel. And so we think we're comparing our baby to their babies. I would just encourage parents, stay on top of it in a way of not an anxiety inducing, oh, they need to hit this mark, but oh, it looks like within the next month or 2 months, we may want to see our baby pivoting in a circle on their tummy. Let's just give a random example.
Sure.
So I'm always stuck. Like, what do I do with this baby in front of me other than just like hold them and kiss them? What could I do today if I know that pivoting is coming down the line? Like, I wonder if instead of putting their toys right in front of them, if I just moved them to the side, if maybe they would try to move their body that way. And it's hard because I think that way because I'm a therapist. But if we can just flip the mindset of, oh my gosh, they're supposed to be doing these things and it's this passive thing, like I just am going to hope that they're going to figure it out, it can actually be really exciting. Look at it as my baby has an hour wake window and I see that they're supposed to be hitting these milestones. Like, I wonder if I did work with them on grabbing their feet at diaper change time or something, trying to it as a positive and exciting thing that we have to look forward to, rather than something that's doom and gloom and we're really fearful of. And so all that to say, if you find that your baby has one skill that is 2 months or more delayed, that is a time where I would say to ask for a therapy referral. If you notice that there's a month or more delay in 2 or more skills, that's another time that you would want to seek a therapy referral.
Sure.
If you notice a flat spot on their head, great time, the earlier the better with that, to ask for a therapy referral. Or if you see like asymmetry of movement. So I know we may be talking about crawling here soon, but if you just see, oh, they only always use their right hand to do things, we want to be seeing, especially in babies, them using both hands, or when they're crawling, they're only using one side, or I'm noticing that they're only rolling over one side. Those are times to look for a referral as well. And then kind of the last thing would be if they had just a really big disinterest in movement or a lot of fussiness with, you trying to put them down for tummy time or get them to play on the floor. If they're just really fussy or they don't move at all, that would be a great time to seek out a therapy referral. So trust your mom gut too. If there's just something that you're like, I don't even know if it hits those marks, but something just feels off and I can't pinpoint it. Worst case scenario, you get an evaluation and they tell you your baby's doing great. And hopefully that gives you peace of mind. But I think a lot of people feel like, what if I go to the evaluation and they tell me nothing's wrong and I'll be so embarrassed? Don't be embarrassed. You followed your mom intuition, and there's a lot to be said for that. We know our babies better than anyone. And so definitely listen to that inner voice.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I want to just do a quick recap of a few of the things that you just said. And I'm really, really bummed that I did not find you prior to my kids turning 2.5, because now I'm like, okay, we're doing okay. At the time, I was not doing okay. I love the idea of, if you think that your kid is maybe struggling in one area, trying to shift your mindset and focusing on, hey, maybe they are, a little bit behind in this, but they're like absolutely crushing it with something else. And that's such a great way to look at it, because I think especially one of the other points that you touched on, having so much access to so much information and other parents, it's so easy to try to look at, okay, well, what's so-and-so doing, or what's their kid doing? And just taking that moment and saying, well, no, look at what my kid's doing. And there's something really exciting about that, and trying to find the happy in all of it, because it is so easy to get very overwhelmed and just kind of fall into those, I don't know, I call it like an internet black hole, and falling down into one of those. So I appreciate that mindset shift. I do want to take a second to talk about crawling. That is one of those milestones where it kind of feels like some kids just make it up on their own. They're just like, hey, I'm going to flail my body this way and it's going to work for me. Maybe they're dragging a leg, maybe they're scooting on their bum. So is this normal? If there's a child that is not doing the typical on all fours crawl?
Sure. Great question. What I would say is common does not always mean normal. So sure, it is very common for kids to do crazy things because their desire to move is so strong. And so what's really exciting is if you see your baby crawling and it's way funky, is that they're still getting so many cognitive benefits of suddenly being able to move their body from point A to point B. So in that time, even if they're crawling in a way that maybe isn't ideal, they're suddenly getting into things like they may be able to get over to a cabinet and pull things out. And that cause and effect is huge. And it's very motivating for movement, but we don't want to allow continued what we call an atypical crawling pattern, just because there are reverberations from that. So anytime I see an atypical crawling pattern, it makes me think, as a therapist, like, I wonder what would cause them to want to move that way rather than in hands and knees, where they're using all four parts of their body kind of in tandem with one another.
Mm-hmm.
I have a blog post on all the tremendous benefits of crawling. I don't want to list those out here, but there are so many that are neurological, that are sensory related, that are motor related. And so I want you to definitely, if you're wanting more information, go take a look at that. My blog, if you click the blog link, there's a little search bar and you can usually type in like crawling.
Perfect.
And it should pop up. But really we want to think, again, there's not something wrong with my baby, but how can I nurture them to get all the benefits of that hands and knees crawling? And all that to say, maybe you're listening to this and you're like, oh man, my kid did asymmetrically crawl, meaning like maybe they drag a leg or they scooted on their bottom and they're 4 years old now. What do I do now that I know that crawling was really important? Well, the really cool thing is that crawling is such a fun activity for kids really up even through elementary school. So there's all kinds of fun things that we can do with our kids to get them to just crawl later on.
Mm-hmm.
If we can catch it early, awesome. But if not, don't panic. They can still crawl around on hands and knees. We can make it a game and get creative with our kids. But really, if you are seeing those atypical patterns, so like I said, bottom scooting or only army crawling and never crawling on hands, knees, or dragging one leg, those are kind of the heavy hitters. Or sometimes kids will inchworm. So where they'll push up onto hands and knees and then flop, and then push up onto hands and knees and flop. Or there's even kids who are just rollers. They'll roll all over the place. So they're technically getting places, but they won't crawl. Any of those things are definitely a sign that you want to try to get the help of a therapist. I do have a crawling course, but I will say once kiddos are in that pattern, it can be really hard to switch it if they're really efficient. If they're just starting that pattern, my courses, my crawl on track course would be awesome. But if they've been in it a while, babies are stubborn and they're like, no, I know how to move my body. So that's where having the help of a therapist would be really beneficial for you to have some strategies and get creative and allow them to crawl on hands and knees.
This response is kind of going into my next question that I have for you, which is, what are some things that we can do to incorporate those motor skills into play to help with our kids' development?
Sure. I made a little list of just like some of my favorite ideas based on different stages, but there's so many things. I think the underlying thought is that if we can encourage our kids to move and be independent, they learn so much just naturally. So trying to just, as they get older, think, oh, how could I up the ante just a little bit for them? Like if I put this toy a little bit further away from them, would they try to crawl? I'm just going to observe them and see what they're going to do. And it really is fun and fascinating. Babies are so amazing to watch if we just sit back and don't do the work for them. But one of my favorite things for moms, especially in that 4th trimester where we're exhausted and we know tummy time is important, but sometimes we flop on the couch at the end of the day and think, I did not do tummy time at all today, is every wake time a diaper change, to then flip them over. And I show on my account, like how to roll them into tummy time and have them do tummy time there. So if you're a first-time mom, most likely you're doing this on a diaper changing table and they're up high, just placing a hand on their bottom, and they'll love being able to look around the room and see. And even if you just get a minute or two there, it's really kind of fun. You can squat down and be eye to eye with them and they think it's fun. But what's cool too is from a very early age, babies begin to expect and anticipate routines. And so this becomes part of their routine. And especially if you've got a baby who really maybe wasn't tolerating tummy time well, if they just know, oh, mom does this with me every time that I get my diaper changed, then they usually start to do a little bit better with it as well. So that one is one of my big ones. A crawling obstacle course. So if you've got a baby who is crawling on their belly and you want to start working on hands and knees crawling, or even if they're already hands and knees crawling, you can just throw down like toss pillows or blankets, kick out your leg in the floor and have them try to crawl up and over it. It's really fun. It's great for wearing them out. And it's so strengthening for them too, but they think it's kind of like silly and fun and they might get frustrated. And then you can help them and it becomes this big, silly thing that you can romp around on that soft surface with them. So that's a fun one as well. I like once babies are pulling to stand and they're kind of maybe at that stage where they're eating puffs or little Cheerios, to do kind of enticements that way. So whether that may be putting little Cheerios along the couch so that they cruise along the couch, or even having their little snack cup and you're sitting behind them and they have to squat while they're holding onto the couch to get their snacks, or even once they're an independent walker, they have to squat down to get their snacks.
Sure.
Snacks are highly motivating for babies as well as adults.
Oh, yeah.
And then just as they become an independent walker and community walker, thinking about creative ways that, like when you're walking into the store, if there's a line in the parking lot or on the sidewalk, oh, can you walk with your feet on the line? Watch mama, I'm going to walk with my feet on the line, kind of like a balance beam, but they're not going to fall off. Or walking on the curb or jumping down off the curb, or jumping over cracks in the sidewalk, things like that. And just trying to think, how can I continue to encourage movement? So I hope those were some fun, like it's hard to go across the full.
No, those are fantastic because you kind of went from like, you took it from newborn all the way to like toddler kind of, full blown walking stage, which is great because I think that, maybe we, myself included, it's like, okay, well, they're walking. Great. They're doing what they're supposed to be doing, but you don't think about challenging that too much more beyond what they're already doing. So I'm going to start doing like, let's walk on the line. Let's step over the crack, because it's a great way to like keep a mundane task fun, but you're also challenging their developmental skills and their motor skills. And I love that. And it's just like, you can make a simple, boring grocery trip a little bit more fun.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So when our kids are on the move, and this doesn't have to include full-blown walking, but just on the move in general, I think that I know that it can be terrifying for parents sometimes, in terms of keeping them out of danger's way, or, having them not falling off of things all the time. So do you have any advice on how to help them to explore and play in a safe way?
Yes. I am a recovering helicopter mom. So I will say that. I mentioned earlier that my daughter was delayed in her milestones and she tripped and fell a lot because of that. Once she was walking, she wanted to keep up with her buddies and her body just wasn't ready for it yet. And so, I was that mom that on the playground, I was constantly holding on to her, just nervous that she was going to fall. But what I've learned over time with her and with my patients is that the more we can encourage them to have that risky play within our safety net, the faster they're going to learn how to be safe.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we're constantly holding on to them and not letting them fall outside those lines of safety a little bit, their body will not learn independently for a very long time because they're just trusting that we're always going to be there. And what we want is for our kids to be independent and safe, right? And so really, like one of the biggest things is rather than physically having your hands on them, maybe if they're going up the stairs at the playground or they're way up high and they're going to go down the slide, is to sort of have your hands just outside their little torso and be there as a safety net, but don't be physically intervening with helping them, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Pausing and watching them and letting them try things on their own and assessing the risk of, for example, a lot of playgrounds will have like the railroad ties around them or something that creates a perimeter around the playground. And I can remember my daughter would walk on those. And because I didn't want her to fall, I would be holding on to her the whole time. And over time, I realized, okay, I can feel her leaning into me. She's not doing this on her own. And so like, that is something like, okay, it's 6 inches off the ground. If she falls, she will be okay.
Sure.
And assessing what risk you're willing to take on. But, in particular, stairs are a huge one that I hear from parents. Oh my gosh, like I always carry my baby down the stairs because I'm terrified that they're going to fall. Totally get it. However, we think in our mind that we will never have an opportunity where our babies end up at the top of the stairs without us watching them. But sometimes things happen and we get distracted or whatever, or the baby gate malfunctions, whatever it may be. And so I would rather my baby be in a position to somewhat know how to safely get downstairs than have no concept at all. And then what they do, babies will use the path of least resistance. And if they're at the top of the stairs, they're going to go head first. Or if they're on the couch, they're going to go head first because they think I need to go that direction. So that's the way I'm going to move my body. And so really trying to help them from an early age, stairs in particular, maybe you're nursing in bed or you brought them in bed with you to snuggle in the morning, but they're able to actually bear some weight in standing and hold on to a surface, flip them onto their tummy whenever you're getting up to make breakfast or whatever it may be, and show them how to get down backwards off of the bed. So trying it from a really early age, from the time that your baby can stand at the couch and hold their weight up for a few seconds, you can start doing this. But that's a huge one, is teaching them those safety things early on. Trying to think of anything else, but just really assessing the risk and what you're willing to take on. And it's probably more than we think they should. But they learn so much by us letting them do that risky play, is what it's called.
And it's truly incredible. And I laugh so hard at you calling yourself a recovering helicopter parent. It has been like almost, I wouldn't call it a true point of contention between my own mom and I, but my mom was definitely a helicopter parent. So she watches how I parent with my own children, and it's very different from how she did it. And we have like the wooden climbing structures, and we let our girls just kind of go. And my mom is sitting there like gasping every 2 seconds. I'm like, Mom, that's not helping them. Like that, they need to learn how to do this. Like, of course I'll be near, but I'm just going to let them but it's so funny. And I know it's not a generational thing because I have friends that are like, I would never let my children do that. But it's just funny to see the dynamic between the two of us because we parent very differently. So it always makes me laugh, but they need to learn.
They do. I love wood climbing structures too. Those are awesome for them learning at home and in a much lower to the ground way to move their body.
Yeah, they're great. We love them. I'm like a big proponent of those. But I have one question for you before we take a quick ad break, and we're going to jump back a little farther. As a physical therapist, are there any popular children's and babies items that you would just be like, no, like steer clear of these? I do not recommend. These are not all that they're cracked up to be.
Yeah, sure. I have a couple. I try to keep the list short. There's some that I'm like, questionable, but probably not terrible. One of them is sleep positioners. So thankfully, a lot of these are getting recalled now for safety, but I think especially in the mom influencer world, things like the Snuggle Me and the DockATot and things like that were getting really, really popular. And we were being sold the idea of, if I buy this $200 or $300 thing, then my baby's going to sleep and I'm going to be able to like have a clean home and look cute like this influencer on Instagram. And I feel like we were kind of like buying into that idea a little bit. And those are ones that they just don't allow our babies to move. I would say the SNU is included in that.
Mm-hmm.
And the caveat that I give with the SNU is that there is a very real percentage of moms who would struggle so much mentally with lack of sleep that it is actually more unsafe for their baby to not be in the SNU, right? So I think every family has to decide for themselves if that's something that the mom's mental health protection is more important than baby's motor development at this point. And that's a very real and valid thing. But anything that is just holding them in one position while they're sleeping, we really want to avoid. We want to allow babies to move in their sleep. It's very physiologically normal. I'm actually due with our third, and I'm exploring the idea of not even swaddling. And there's nothing that is like, oh my gosh, it's so wrong to swaddle, but just meaning that startle reflex that we swaddle to get rid of to begin with, it actually goes away faster when babies are moving more in their sleep. And it's very normal for them to move in their sleep. So all that to say, I don't have like, soapbox about swaddles. I just be curious to see if I just ripped the Band-Aid off early rather than, because we have to rip it off at some point, right? So sleep positioners, and that goes for too, like little positioning pillows and stuff like that. Those are an absolute no. They don't help with torticollis or with head shape, etc. And then baby walkers are another one. So baby walkers, meaning the kind that you put them in, they have like a little seat that they sit in and they have caster wheels that they roll around. Thankfully, these have gotten a lot safer, but they're banned in a lot of countries because their babies are getting themselves into positions that they're not cognitively ready for. So think about things like if you've got a baby who's just sitting up in the floor, you're used to putting your coffee on the end table in the living room and not having to worry at all about that affecting your baby. But suddenly if they're up in their baby walker and maybe you dropped your coffee and you were running to go to the bathroom, they can suddenly access that. They can get things off of countertops, they can get to staircases and go down. And so it just unlocks this world of movement that they're not quite ready for. And in fact, in the therapy world, we are seeing a delay in independent walking with use of baby walkers. So this is a hard one because I think our grandmas that we're having now, their generation used these a lot. And so we just have information now that we did then. And so just having that conversation of, oh, like, I know I used this and it was totally fine, but there's been more information that's came out that these really may not be safe. All that to say too, if you've got one, if someone gifted you one and you really don't want to be rude, you can actually, I think you can lock the wheels. So it's okay if you want to use it just as a standing toy. You can also kind of like wedge it in with pillows and things like that to where they can use it as a standing toy, but definitely don't want to be letting baby walk around in it, because how they walk is they lean their belly into it and it goes forward and propels. And so they're kind of walking on tippy toes, leaning forward, which is why sometimes it can alter independent walking. And then jumpers. So this is another one too that I have ways to modify, but like the Johnny jump up is very popular right now. And I feel like it's another kind of like status symbol thing. It's kind of a higher ticket item. Lots of mom influencers have it. And so the way I explain this to people is if you were going to sign yourself up for a marathon, you would not go out day one and run 26 miles. Your body, our bones and our muscles strengthen in response to stress. And they can also deteriorate a lot in response to stress if they're not ready for it. And so if we did that, our joints would be trashed, we would be sore and it would be terrible. Now, not to say that babies get sore from the Johnny jumper, but I don't want to be putting a load on a baby's joints that their body is not ready for yet.
Right.
So we don't see jumping until closer to 2 years of age. So just from a therapy perspective, if we can avoid putting them in something that they're jumping at 6 months or 12 months or whatever, that would be great. All that to say too, babies love the Johnny jumper. And so it's really hard. So I totally understand if parents want to do it and they already have it. I've seen some parents rig up some crazy things where they'll actually put hooks in the ceiling and the babies can jump on the couch, or they just put like a couch cushion, like our couch cushions pull off. You could put that under baby's legs. If we're softening the surface, I'm okay with it. I'm totally fine if it's just they're not jumping on a hard, flat surface. And then I've also seen families get a Rubbermaid tote of water and
Yeah.
put their Johnny jumper outside, and the baby can like jump and swim in the water. And I think that's awesome. And kind of like I talked about crawling earlier, like all these things can be modified in a way that actually can be used for development rather than being a detriment. The only one I would say is like the sleep positioners probably just need to go. I think a lot of people are donating them to pet shelters now. If
Oh, I
they've
love
got them
that.
being recalled, and it's like a little cozy spot for their animal to lay.
Sure.
So I think that's a great way to repurpose them.
I am gonna go give my pediatrician a round of applause because those 3 items actually were on her like, hey, maybe like shy away from these. And especially with the walkers, I had no idea. And I was, of course, like, new mom, thought I knew everything because I read stuff on the internet. And when she told me that, I was like, that is so weird. What in the world? But she was saying about how it can like affect their knees and they get used to leaning in. And I'm like, I'm very happy. And I know that we have a great pediatrician now because of
That's
the things
awesome.
that she
I'm very
told us.
impressed too.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we are going to talk all about how to pick the right shoes for new walkers and beyond.
Life with kids is busy, so if you can't squeeze in that quick trip to the grocery store between mealtime and nap time, or you're too busy chauffeuring the kids to afternoon activities to pick up those last-minute dinner items, Instacart has you covered. You can get the products you love from your local store and even shop all your favorite stores in a single order. Plus, Instacart will hand-select your items based on your preferences, only picking the freshest produce. And you can get delivery to your door in as fast as 1 hour. Instacart even highlights deals in your area to help you save money. Get free delivery on your first order over $35. Follow the link in our show notes to let Instacart know we sent you and to help support our show. Instacart, the perfect shopping solution for busy families everywhere.
Okay, we are back, and I want to talk about everybody's favorite, shoes. So, can you tell me why shoes are important?
Yeah, great question. So shoes, once baby needs them, or toddler, hopefully is kind of what we're talking about, are important because they help build stability and strength from the ground up. And so I'm going to go into that a little bit more, but babies really don't need shoes at all. Barefoot is best until for safety reasons, like walking out in the community, whether it be walking in Target and we want to protect from germs, or walking at the park and we want to protect from hot or cold or mulch or rock or whatever. They don't need shoes until that point. And even at that point, I love a little soft-soled moccasin. Really, the longer we can delay them needing shoes or wearing shoes, the better, because that allows their foot and ankle and lower leg to develop in a way that they are supporting their own body, and everything's built kind of from the ground up once we start standing and walking. But the shoe industry is another industry that's telling us, oh, here, we're going to make this shoe that does everything for your foot. So your foot doesn't have to do anything. And then when we don't have shoes on, we have no strength or stability or anything in our foot and ankle. And so if we can choose a shoe that allows our babies and toddlers to feel through their feet and to let those tiny, tiny little muscles build the strength on their own, that's really setting them up for success later in life and throughout development and all the fun things that they're going to do with movement as they get older.
So, all that being said, what details or features or, just components should we be looking for when we're choosing a shoe for our kids?
Great question. And I have a blog post that I think that we're going to link on just like Shoes 101 that has lots of great visuals. So I would definitely go there, because if as I'm talking, you're like, well, what does she mean by wide toe box? It has lots of great pictures to hopefully show you. But one of the biggest things is having a really flexible sole of the shoe. So when I get a shoe for a toddler, specifically a new walker, I want to be able to fold that shoe in half. And most people are probably like, what? You want to fold it in half? They do not need as much support as a lot of the shoe industry would like for us to believe. In fact, we want them to be able to feel through all of those sensory receptors in their feet so that they can grow and learn on their own, kind of like I mentioned. So a really flexible sole. That doesn't mean that it's not protective though. So we don't want to have to worry about it being so thin that if they're walking at the park and there's a rock that it's going to poke them through their shoe,
Sure.
but really, really flexible. And then that's on that same vein of the sole, we want to see that it has a really wide toe box. So where their toes go, when your little one is standing up in their shoes, you should be able to kind of feel with your thumb and feel that there's space and that their toes are splaying out. That helps them with their balance, but it also helps their foot to continue to grow and develop in the shape that it's supposed to, rather than a lot of our shoes, especially for adults, but a lot of shoes, even for kids, are scrunching their toes together. And so then they're growing that way. They're growing so rapidly in these first few years of life. We want to make sure that their shoes are not constricting that growth. So those are two of the huge ones. Other ones that I tell people to look for is not having a really high lift to the toe. A lot of shoes for toddlers will have a slight lift, and that's great because they trip and fall a lot. And if we can give them a little bit of an advantage against gravity, that's fine. But as kids age, we don't want to see that toe box rising a lot. And I would say in a lot of the more popular athletic shoes, we do see that. And it's just not necessary. We need more of a flat, minimalist shoe. Mom to mom, I like recommending that they have a pull loop on the back because it's a lot easier to get kids' feet in. I like seeing a removable insole. So the little part that their foot sits on, if that can remove, it gives us a little bit more wiggle room too. Like maybe our kids between sizes, or they have a really chunky foot, removing that insole is awesome to give you a little bit more breathing room. And then another mom to mom Velcro is just, I'm like on the train of my kid's going to learn to tie their shoes by the time they go to college. I'm not concerned about it. I'm like Velcro all the way, because I can remember how often like my mom had to retie my shoes while I was still learning. So Velcro is great because it has a lot of adjustability for those chunky feet that are really common in the toddler years.
So I know that you said you have information on shoes on your website. Is there like a search bar? Where should we be going to find this? And I believe we'll be able to link it out as well in the show notes.
Yeah, hopefully we can link like my main shoe post that I feel like is the most informative. And then there's also like links within that to different things like how to measure your toddler for shoes and secondhand shoe shopping, like what you should be looking for there. Shoes for chunky feet, things like that. But the thing I want to say too is that don't feel like you're screwing your kids up if you get a shoe that doesn't hit all these marks. This is like best case scenario, things that we're looking for. And I like to educate on this because I think so many shoes are not made this way. But what's really exciting is that as more and more information is coming out, there are more and more quote unquote minimalist shoes coming out of all kinds. So like we got a minimalist snow boot that I can almost fold in half, believe it or not, but it's still warm and it's still protective and it's still waterproof. There's also cute little like church, what I call like church sandals.
Yeah.
You're becoming more minimalist, and water shoes and all kinds. So you don't have to feel like, I feel like a few years ago when we thought of minimalist shoes, we thought of those shoes like with the toes in them and like they were really funky looking. And even as moms, like as adult women, the minimalist shoes were kind of like, oh, you have to like choose to have a very different looking shoe if you're going to choose that for your feet. And now that's just not the case, which is really exciting. And I'm finding more and more brands that kind of fit within this realm.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that, because like I said, that's information that that's a new space to me too. I know you mentioned one of your courses earlier in our conversation, and you have a ton of information on your blog. Can you tell our listeners a little bit more about some of the resources that you offer on your website?
So my courses were really made for the parent who maybe be in that limbo, like I talked about, where we're in the watch and wait and they want some actionable strategies, or you just want to be proactive. So I've got a tummy time guide. So that is just a PDF, but then I have a rolling course, a crawling course, and a walking. It's technically a webinar. So, but all of those share my best tips that I use in the clinic that I coach parents through every day. It's kind of like, pretty standard. If a child does not need therapy, but they just need a little bit of an extra nudge, They're awesome. And so I encourage you to go to my site, themovementmamablog.com. If you click on shop or on courses, you'll see all of that there. But then my blog, I've really been working to build out, because what I've learned is that Instagram is awesome, but sometimes we just need to be able to take in like a lot of information, and Instagram is not always the place for that, to like really fully conceptualize and understand a topic. I think by the time this airs, my spring and summer shoe guide will be out, which hopefully will be helpful as well to give you some ideas, because I've got a lot of ideas for tennis shoes, but not necessarily yet ideas out there for summer water shoes or sandals and things like that. So hopefully that will be helpful as well. And then of course, I've got my Instagram where you can find me. And I am next year, with the baby coming, hoping to build out my YouTube channel, because I'm a very visual learner and I know lots of mamas are that way. So I'm hoping to film some things for babies and toddlers and things like that, of tutorials that moms can just pop on and be like, oh, I want to work on this with my baby. And I'll just search it on YouTube.
Well, let me just say that all of us at Moms Meet are in awe of you. 2 kiddos, 1 on the way. Congratulations. And just the amount of work that you're doing for other parents and caregivers is phenomenal. So we're all very grateful for you. And thank you so much for joining us today, Kailee. We are I'm over the moon about the conversation. I'm really happy that we got to chat. Again, you can find Kailee at themovementmamablog.com and on Instagram at themovementmama. So thank you everyone for joining us and listening in today. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button to make sure you don't miss the latest podcast episodes.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been fun.
This episode is brought to you by PhD Feminine Health. PhD Feminine Health is reinventing holistic feminine hygiene and wellness solutions that help millions of women feel confident and comfortable. They were developed in partnership with physicians and sell the #1 doctor-recommended boric acid vaginal suppository. Boric acid, a natural compound found in seawater, can be used for vaginal odor. PhD Feminine Health suppositories are the holistic, effective, and affordable solution to keep you feeling confident and comfortable.